Writing 1060. This is a lesson about not using Google to start your academic research and using a database instead. And to demonstrate this lesson, I'm going to start with Google and show you a couple of things in terms of using Google to do your research. So a couple of things before we get started, just to explain why Google isn't the best when doing research. Basically, anyone with access to cyberspace and anyone who knows how to create a blog or website has access to publishing their work through Google. So when you begin your academic research using Google, these same websites or blogs and general information are filtering in as part of the hits when you try to get source material. And additionally, then, things like Wikipedia, About.com, even medical websites like Mayo Clinic or, I'm trying to think, there's another general medical website. Basically, general information websites. Those all come through Google too, of course. So, general information, or maybe not great information websites, all come through when you try to do your academic research. So, another reason that's not great for using Google as a go-to for your research is that Google is a corporation, and then other corporations too can pay to have their websites be the first ones that come up when people do their research, so that the first few links are corporate websites. So if you're in the habit of clicking on the first few websites when you're doing your research, that's not going to be super helpful for you. So these are the base reasons why you probably don't want to use Google, and you want to use a database for your academic research rather than a general search engine for your material. But I do also want to demonstrate a couple of things that happen when we actually do actively use Google to search for sources. I have a given phrase here, vaccination effects in the medical field, because that's a term, that's a topic actually, that relates to the investigative essay. And that might be something that you start with if you were to begin your research. So I'm not using any quotes. I'm not going to do any advanced searches. I'm just kind of typing in where we might begin if we were to start researching for our paper. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in, or I've got that typed into Google, and let's see what results we get. So with Google, this generates about 83,800,000 results. So that's a lot of material out there in cyberspace, just about vaccinations or the medical field. So, in Google's defense, like I said, that's not with any advanced searches or quotes. But because we're doing a generalized search engine with access to any of that cyberspace material, we would have to evaluate credibility and then move on to content. What kind of content does this match for my actual paper? So if we take a look at the first couple of sources that we have here, we do see that one comes from modernmedicine.com, and it's vaccination compliance and controversy. So we would have to click on that and see whether or not it was a credible source material, a credible website, and if it matches any of the stuff that we would need for our paper. Then we have a link here from NCBI, a .gov article about healthcare workers, and then something from the same website, another article, something about emerging field of vaccine adverse events. So we'd have to click on both of these. These seem like decent websites, but we would have to find out what the material is, if it really was a decent website, that kind of thing. Let's see. So basically we have our work cut out for us, in terms of what kind of material there is, whether or not it's credible source information, and how we could use it in our paper. If we were to use a database, though, I want to see how we can compare this to a database. If we go to OU's homepage and just click on the library link, we're actually going to search the exact same source, or the exact same phrase. The OU library page takes us right to the one search. And we're going to click in the same thing. Just click search. So the way a database works, I'm going to explain this while we're having this come up, but a database chooses the materials that are offered to their students and researchers instead of just having access like Google does to anything. All the material on a database has been published and fact-checked, and these materials come from periodicals, journals, newspapers, books, all kinds of printed, published materials. So they might not even be on the interwebs. So because you're learning how to write academic research essays, academic research is what you will need to further your ideas on these kinds of essays. So databases is where you probably should begin. This cuts out the credibility step too. So you mostly just need to check for content and dates to make sure that the source material that you're looking at is the most current, if that's what your essay is looking for. So with a database, you pretty much know that the source material you're looking at is credible. You just need to see if the content matches what it is that you're looking for the ideas in your essay. And if we take a look at the phrasing, it's the exact same as what we put into Google, but we're narrowed down to 106,541 results. So it cut it down significantly from what we've got in Google. And that helps us out a little bit. We can kind of navigate and pinpoint what we need as opposed to sifting through so much in Google. And then the other thing is here too, as I pointed out with Google, we haven't done anything here to advance our search. We're not using any quotes so far. We're not narrowing down the topics or searching for main ideas or anything like that. So keep that in mind. As you get further in your ideas for what you want to develop with your essay, you can narrow your search a little bit more. The other thing is that for the investigative essay, I'm asking that you guys use 2 peer-reviewed sources. And what that means is, well, I'll define that in just a second, but what you guys can do to try to narrow that down even further is come over to the left-hand side and click Scholarly and Peer Review. That's going to narrow your search even further. And what this means is that all of the results that come up, scholarly publications mean that the pieces are published in educational in nature. So all of these sources are either going to be scholarly or peer-reviewed. Scholarly and peer-reviewed. And so so each of these are scholarly in nature, but not all of them are peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed means that the piece was written by experts in the field for experts in the field. The published pieces were peer-reviewed before publication by a panel of experts on the topic and written by experts on the topic. So clicking this button ensures that each source is provided back will be scholarly or peer-reviewed. So you will still need to see if the source you're looking at is peer-reviewed, since that's the requirement for the paper. If there's multiple authors with degrees in the field or subject, the source is written on, your source is peer-reviewed. The pieces are usually pretty long as well, so that's a pretty good indicator. So if we take a look at this very first one, actually, flexibility of oral Corella vaccine dosing, a randomized controlled trial measuring immune responses. And then we have got some authors listed here. So I bet if we were to click on, I'm hoping that this will work out for us. if we were to click on this to see what the degrees were for those authors, or to read through the abstract perhaps. Basically what we would want to do is try to figure out who these authors are and the editors. Well, actually the editors show that it was in a general hospital, so this is a peer-reviewed source. So if we see that it's edited by a professional in the field as well, that's going to be a pretty big indicator too. So this is a really good indicator that this is a peer-reviewed source. So I just wanted to show you this. But anyway, you'd have to look through your source to make sure. And as we go through the course too, in 2 weeks we're going to do a library tutorial, and there will also be a link where if you're really just not sure about your peer-reviewed source, you can plug in the link to your source and it will tell you if it's peer-reviewed. So we'll have that in a couple of weeks as well. But anyhow, all of these aspects, you can't find any of this stuff on Google. There's no scholarly and peer-reviewed button for you to click on Google. And really, much of these materials are pretty much difficult to find when using Google because you have to sift through so much. And many of them can't be found on Google because they're not published online. A lot of these articles here or these pieces here are published in textbooks or hard copy publications. Most of all, there's no scholarly or peer-reviewed button. There's just not a button on Google to click. Google Scholar is a little bit better. So those of you who know about Google Scholar, you can use it if you'd like. But not all of its sources are scholarly. It's a little misleading. And because anyone has access to Google Scholar, it asks that people pay to view full articles on many of the pieces. But since all of you are Oakland University students, you don't have to pay for any of the source material in these databases. And you know that all of these databases are scholarly since they're in a database. So I hope that explains to you a little bit about why you might want to use a database to begin your academic research and why Google is not the best way to start. Once you find your scholarly and academic research, you might need to use Google to find data or news sources that haven't been scholarly researched yet, especially if your topic is pretty new. So in those cases, pay careful attention to how one should evaluate sources on general websites. So best of luck to you guys. I hope that this helps.